the thing that I wrote originally was based on some abstract simulation modelling of termites. So termites, one of the amazing things that they do is build these very elaborate homes, and they do that over long periods of time. Even though they're very simple, they're able to coordinate themselves to achieve that by communicating using pheromones, which are chemicals, molecules that diffuse away from the termites or can be placed in the world and trigger the termites' behaviour. So they can attract the termites to a place, or they can trigger building behaviour or inhibit building behaviour. And we still have huge amounts to learn about how that happens. What I was interested in is what if people left trails? What if people left physical trails? So if you imagine looking at a cityscape and the people walking around have plumes of coloured gas emanating from them, which seems something that I see images like that a lot in adverts of cars driving through. They want to sell you a car, and they show a car with a stream of paint, or footage from these Indian festivals where people throw paint at each other, or people with kind of fumes behind them. So it seems like I liked that sort of set of imagery. And what I was interested in is that currently we do that. We leave trails already, and we're very comfortable with it, online. So we're very aware of the fact that we leave a trail of our behaviour online. And we're very aware of both the positive side of that it allows us to share information with our friends, find people, coordinate, and that there's a kind of collective benefit that we get from some of it, right? People that viewed this book also viewed this book. And we're also aware of a negative side of it, that the NSA is recording everything that we do, and the kind of privacy issues that Steen raised. But we're kind of blundering into it anyway. Even though everyone is sort of at least vaguely aware of that, it's not stopping anybody. And there's more and more of that kind of social media and that kind of echo of my behaviour being recorded. So it seemed totally feasible to me that people might embrace a physical manifestation of that. So that's kind of just what I threw out. And I really hadn't thought about the physics of that, like what the technology actually would look like. And what I think we've spent most of our time struggling with. So I think on Annie's side, there was a whole bunch of characters and a sort of scenario that was coming together. And then we had to talk about how that matched up with various different manifestations that this trail generating could lead to. And that's what we spent most of today talking about. So I don't know whether you want to talk a little bit about
yeah, and one of the reasons I was really attracted to the trails was for a really non-scientific reason. They just sounded like they might be quite pretty, and that was an attractive thing to write about. And it's interesting that Seth was talking about adverts, because there's a T-Mobile advert with ribbons of colour coming out of people's phones. So it's very similar. So we were both thinking in the same way. And I think when we first had our conversation, I was slightly disappointed when we Skyped, because I think you said you couldn't actually see the pheromone trails. It's something that you sniff. So we spent a lot of time trying to make it something visual, because we really would like it to be visual. So we've had lots of conversations about how that might work. And in the kind of the first draft of my story, I've got the character putting kind of special lenses in his eyes that convert the trails to something visual. And when we talked about various things, and we also talked about the mechanics of, because these are artificial pheromone trails, and the mechanics of attaching that to someone, and we came up with quite something I think might work quite well, but it would be good to get feedback on it from a scientific point of view. So I don't know how scientific it is about again, they're small enough to be injected, and you might have to jump in here and help me with the brain part.
So I originally was just thinking about nanoparticles, like maybe you have a device on you which is just spitting out nanoparticles, little things, and they're so small that you can't see them, which is what was disappointing, right? But you could smell them. A device could pick them up. But who would want a big device, under their skin to do that? That seems a bit insane.
Maybe the same people that are willing to go with this sort of brick in their pockets.
Well, I think the body horror of having a device inside you is different from the comfortable, having a device in your pocket. I mean, in 50 years people could change. But so we thought about something like this. What if it came out of a kind of health technology? Which I think it echoes some of the things that Lenka was saying. So what if you had a society that was terrified of pandemics, and they decided that they would inject everybody with little nano machines that would live inside them, nestle in your pineal gland, where you make hormones or where you synthesize the naturally occurring pheromones. So we do already have a cloud of pheromones around us that we're producing. We just can't see them, and they don't last very long. But they are the kind of chemicals that they influence mood and sexual attraction. There are suggestions that they could be correlated with illness and mental illness, and some people can be sensitive to that. So what if you had little devices inside you that just piggybacked on that, so they augment your natural smells? Right? And initially it's just so that your body can advertise whether it's sick or not. Right? So you go to breathe on a stick, and the stick tells you you're sick, you have to be quarantined. And you can program it remotely, so as soon as you know about the new disease, then people who manifest it can be quarantined. But as soon as you have something like that, people can expand it, turn it into a commercial, more, what's the word? Decorative. So instead of having this functional use, why not have breath that you can see? Why not have nanoparticles that glitter? Just like contact lenses. You start off with contact lenses and you end up with blue ones and red ones and glittery ones and ones with an hourglass, and Marilyn Manson has one that, you could do the same thing. And then you could have devices that are recording the pheromones that they smell, and then they can upload them, and then you have them on Google Maps, and then you can see where people are, and people are leaving trails in a much more pervasive way. And again, you could have surveillance. Instead of giving people an electronic tag when they were criminals, you would just reprogram this so that it generates artificial pheromones that show up to police sniffer dogs. So, and also I think we both liked, in the same way that I really liked the idea of the clouds of paint and stuff, the idea of somebody on a cold, frosty morning and that breath that they have, not just being breath, but being something that has signaling, something that shows things about them, who they are, or the lipstick that you leave on a coffee cup. Even if you're not wearing lipstick, now you will be leaving a kind of hallmark on that coffee cup that could be used to identify you. So I quite like the idea that it was built on something that everybody is familiar with. We have saliva, it already has a taste and a smell, and there's already a sort of physicality to that. Some people it's revolting, it's not revolting, it's sexy, it's not sexy. And just layering some technology on top of that seemed like a nice way to go. But instead of focusing on the surveillance side of things entirely, I was really into the reason that people like Facebook, even though it's like voluntarily being surveilled, right? But they love it because they love showing people where they are, who they're with, sharing, and they get huge benefit out of that. Geeky, quirky little people who would never have had a friend in the world are connected by this pervasive technology and suddenly become powerful groups who have things marketed to them. And there's that positive, if that is a positive, but that kind of social side that people find attractive. I was really keen on focusing on that rather than on being monitored and oppressed by this pervasive technology. But we spent most of the day really trying to talk about the characters and a story that would fit into this world, I think.
Yeah, so there are different levels of monitoring and different levels of trails, and I think there's this kind of the voluntary trails which I'm going to try and create with a social social networking app that you can breathe on and link your pheromone signature to your profile, so that you can then upload your trails and let people know where you're going and what you're doing. So it's very much trying to transfer internet trails into physical trails. But then there's also another side to it, that it could be used by the police or the state in maybe a benign way. It's that balance of civil liberties and surveillance for the public good, which is quite interesting. And I think we talked quite a lot about Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden and Julian Assange today, and I think what I want to do with this story is have a character go through a struggle as he comes to realise that what he thought was fun technology has a darker side, and that maybe it comes to expose something as a big struggle, and he has to make some kind of sacrifice, losing his family or having to leave his city. So that's really what we talked about today, how to fit that around the technology. We also talked quite a lot about, because the story is set partly in Berlin, which in 2070 is kind of a free city-state, separate from the some kind of United States of Europe that's going on elsewhere, that's kind of shied away from this sort of technology for historical reasons. So there's a lot of contrast between Berlin and Brussels, where the action takes place, in how that technology is used or accessible or isn't available. And something is going to happen to my main character's eyes, which enables him to see people's trails all the time. We haven't quite figured out the mechanics of that. And possibly I think it's going to be done to him. He's going to be manipulated into doing something that affects his eyes, so all the time he can see trails, which is in Brussels, where everybody has a trail, is completely overwhelming, visually overwhelming. In Berlin, in theory, people shouldn't have trails, but when he goes back to Berlin, he'll find that people actually do have trails for some reason, even though the technology is banned or disapproved of in Berlin. So it's not fully formed idea yet, or it's maybe 6 or 7 ideas, and we have to choose how to take that forward. But that's kind of, I think there's also scope for a really hot sex scene with luminous saliva left on various parts of the body. So I'm thinking about how I can work that in as well. And shall I can read a little bit, but it's this is I think I should say that one of the characters in this draft, and it probably won't make it to the next draft, is an aura reader. So she's reading auras as opposed to trails. I was having a bit of a science rebellion, so we have auras. And at this time also, auras were coming out of people's fingers, not out of breath, but that's kind of all that's different. There's snow on the ground, fresh snow, the kind that has a powdery crunch when you step on it. The snow has an aura, a pale violet phosphorescence suspended in the half-light. Lainey dances across the snow, arms outstretched, giggling, snowflakes in her hair. Her feet leave a pattern of haphazard boot prints. Her nanotrail, her beautiful and unique and dangerous nanotrail, dances with her in pinkish-purple spirals, seeming even brighter than usual against the whiteness of the snow. Her nanotrail stays suspended in the air, a series of tangled loops drawn by her body as she dances. Snowflakes fall, blurring the outline of her boot prints, but they'll last longer than her nanotrail, half faded already. Lainey is standing still now, breathing hard, her nanotrail flickering around her. I watch her from the shadow of the bridge until all that's left of her dance is a faint impression, floating unanchored somewhere inside my eyes, as if I've spent too long staring into a purple light. Paul, she says, holding out her hand, let's make snow angels. She lies down, scissoring her arms back and forth. It's stupid and dangerous to get so cold, but her enthusiasm is infectious. I lie down next to her and make a snow angel of my own. She takes my hand and our trails mix together, my weak orange subsumed by her vibrant purple. I let go of her hand and scramble up, retreating to the archway. Lainey follows, scraping snow off her coat. Paul, are you okay? She brushes snow from my collar. In the shadow of the warehouse, Lainey's snow angel is still pulsing with a cloud of purple particles. My cloud, weak to begin with, fades from orange to faint peach and then nothing. I scan each of my limbs and my torso. There's a faint flicker of orange as I move, but nothing more. It's degrading fast. Is it going, Paul? Already? She sighs and rests her head on my shoulder, her breath warm against my cheek. It's faint, but okay for a little while, I think. She places a cold hand on either side of my face, her slender fingers stretching up to my temples. Your aura is still strong, she says. A little grey, perhaps, but strong. But having an aura won't help me now. My nana trail is fading fast. In a few hours, I'll be illegal.